I request Professor Balkar Singh to please play the shabad.
वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह। देह सेवा बल मोहे है शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो हर सो जब जाए डरो निश्चय कर अपनी जीत करो निश्चय कर अपनी जीत करो बोले सोनिहार सत श्री अकाल। देह सेवा बर मोहे है शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो हर सिख हो अपने ही मन को लालच हो गुण तो चलो लालच हो गुण तो चलो बोले सोनिहार सत श्री अकाल। देह सेवा बर मोहे है शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो जब आदमी निदान बने अत हीरन में तब जूझ मरो अत हीरन में तब जूझ मरो बोले सोनिहार सत श्री अकाल। देह सेवा बर मोहे है शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो शुभ कर मन ते कब हो न डरो। वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह।
Thank you, Balkar sir. Thank you, students, for giving a spiritual start to the webinar.
Professor Gurpreet, एक second.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello, जी sir.
Dr. SP Singh ਨੂੰ unmute ਕਰ ਦਿਓ, co-host ਬਣਾਓ, please.
ठीक है सर।
सर बनाया हुआ है।
ठीक है,
बात कर लेते हैं। मैंने बोल
Before we initiate webinar proceeding, I would like to thank our Honorable President, Dr. SP Singh ji, former Vice Chancellor, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, whose vision and determination always keep us driving to pursue with such types of intellectual endeavors. Thank you so much, sir, for your constant support. Now it's time to have welcome address from a personality whose untiring efforts and constant motivation provide us an effortless path to conduct these academic activities. He is none other than our worthy principal, Dr. Ravinder Singh ji. Sir, I request you to accord a formal welcome to our guests. Sir, please.
Thank you, Professor Gurpreet. Dear friends, good morning to all of you. For a long time now, various departments of Gujranwala Guru Nanak Khalsa College Ludhiana have been maintaining a glorious tradition of organizing national and international webinars, seminars, symposium, conferences, faculty development program, etc. on wide range issues at regular intervals. I am so pleased and satisfied that our postgraduate department of computer science is organizing a national webinar. Rather, I must say it's an international webinar on online teaching strategies. Our friends, with COVID-19 nearly overnight transforming our traditional classrooms into the virtual classrooms, it can seem like a distance learning has appeared out of nowhere. Online courses have become an incredibly popular way for the students and the employees to advance their education or professional development. Teaching an online course requires a different methods from the traditional classroom methods. So it's important that the teachers are adapt or develop their skills to the online learning methods to make their material effective and engage for learner. To discuss all these kinds of issues, we have planned this webinar today. Well, on the behalf of Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council and Postgraduate Department of Computer Science, I extend warm welcome to our worthy guest, Dr. Hardeep Singh, Dean Academic Affairs, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, Dr. Kamaljeet Singh, Director Computer Science, Punjabi University, Patiala, Madam Jasleen Kaur Bindra, Director Alliance Learning Academy, Vancouver, Canada, Dr. Renu Dhir, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, National Institute of Technology, Jalanda. I'm sure that thought-provoking ideas to be put forward by our experts in this webinar will definitely enhance our knowledge about the theme. I would also like to thank our managing committee, especially our worthy president, Dr. S.P. Singh, former Vice Chancellor, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, and Sardar Arvinder Singh, Honorary General Secretary, Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council, for their active support, which always proved to be very effective for all of us. I congratulate Postgraduate Department of Computer Science for taking such a wonderful initiative to conduct this webinar today. Here I wish to acknowledge the professional commitment and dedicated efforts of Madam Asha Rana, HOD of the Computer Science Department, and Professor Gurpreet Singh, organizing secretary of this webinar. And would also like to thank our technical team for the technical support to conduct this webinar. I wish you good luck all, and I hope that this webinar will bring the desired results. I welcome you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your motivational words. As we all know that we are passing through the tough time of COVID-19, due to this pandemic, education has changed dramatically with the rise of e-learning, whereby teaching is undertaken remotely and on digital platform. Dear all, our classes are now online, but we need to keep our students in line. Without your physical presence in the classroom, it is vital that you establish a virtual presence at the very beginning of the e-learning course. Online teaching need to be engaging and supporting students right from the start and for the duration of the course. To maintain an effective learning community, online courses have become an incredibly popular way for the student to advance their education. Teaching an online course require different methods from the traditional classroom. So it is important that teacher adapt or develop their skills to the online learning environment to make their material effective and engaging for learning. My dear friends, your classes don't have to be merely entertaining, but they do need to be engaging. Low student engagement result in higher rate of dropout of the classroom. Engage with your learning community through online posts, forums, or social media. With this strategy in place, you can feel more confident about your online teaching skills and e-learning material. You will also know that you are working a create a more positive and collaborative learning environment for your students. So for detailed discussion, we have with us distinguished speaker Dr. Hardeep Singh, Dr. Kaur Singh, practical and technical views and experience with the audience. We are very much confident to have a fruitful discussion on the topic with galaxy of eminent speaker today. Hopefully, the discussion and finding of this webinar will be immense benefit for the participants. Now, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is a skilled academician and experienced researcher and consultant currently serving as director Alliance Learning Academy, Vancouver, Canada. Mrs. Jasleen Kaur Bindra has over 15 years of teaching experience in prestigious institutions across India and Canada. She has played multiple roles, including that of an assistant professor, a soft skill trainer, and ESL content writer, and has been associated with institutions like Oakridge International, Hyderabad, Central Institute of Management, Delhi, and International Language Academy of Canada in Vancouver, BC. She is the she is founder and director of Alliance Learning Academy, BC, where she continues to train international students for the two leading English proficiency tests, namely IELTS and SLP, for purposes of Canadian PR. Since the onset of COVID-19, she has built her expertise in online model of teaching and training her students in and outside Canada. Recognizing the Canadian immigration aspiration among Indians, Jasleen is diversified soon in the area as well to provide expert advice coupled with honest and transparent client interaction. I would like to invite Mrs. Jasleen Kaur Bindra to share her views. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I would like to thank Principal Dr. Ravinder Singh and the Postgraduate Department of Computer Science, DG and Khalsa College for giving me this opportunity to become a part of this event. And I'm extremely humbled by sharing the stage with Dr. Hardeep Singh. He's always been, the prestige point of somebody that I've looked up in GNDU. So I really can't believe I'm doing this right in front of you. But I'm going to try and do my best to share whatever little experience I have with all of you. Can I request you to please have my presentation on, Professor Asha?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sharing.
Thank you. Right, so today I would be sharing my views and experiences with all of you on the strategies we can use to make online teaching more effective. We can move to the next slide, please. So, like Professor Gurpreet already set the background for what we are going to talk, and very well said. A lot has happened in the past 2 years, and the education industry, like every other industry, took a big hit. So the year 2020 has witnessed the emergence of innovative e-learning solutions to satisfy the challenging requirements which all of us faced and the entire educational sector faced. So these smart learning technologies have transformed the learning methodology altogether. And we all have to agree that digital learning is a new normal and it is here to stay. So what has changed over this period? I would say traditional form of teaching around the world has been changing rapidly with the advancement of technology. Not just now with COVID coming into our lives, but even in the physical classrooms. Technology had taken on a bigger role, changing how lessons were delivered and received. So while there are numerous teaching methods, some of the traditional methods used in classes, the physical classes, can be applied. I would agree that they can be applied equally efficiently in online teaching as well. However, the teaching method you select should change. And it should be based on various factors. Factors like teaching philosophy, objectives, subject area, and even classroom demographics. Additionally, I am a very strong believer that the unidirectional method of content delivery, the method which has been prevalent in our system of offline teaching, where primarily the teacher standing in front of the entire class is delivering a lecture, it would be far from ideal for online classes. The classroom setting needs to be more interactive and should aim towards community building. That's what our classes have lacked all these years, but probably this is the time where community building also becomes equally important as content delivery is. So teachers need to explore various tools for e-learning to be effective. For example, just a very, very basic example, the traditional white or the blackboard that all of us used in our classes, Now that has to be replaced with the online whiteboard, which should be used extensively for various purposes. Like carrying out assignments, brainstorm around ideas, lessons, mind mapping, or doing interactive exercises, or even to review homework and leave a feedback. And the best part about this online tool is that you don't have to erase it, because it can be digitalized for future references, not just for the teacher, for the students as well. So this is how we have been adapting, and I think that journey has to continue for quite some time. So as teachers, we need to understand that we cannot just take our material, what we were using in person classes, and use it exactly the same way in our online classes. We must adapt our instructions for the online format, like choosing our content very carefully to begin with, and then building rich activities that keep students engaged while they're working on their own too. Because as compared to offline teaching, when we were doing it in person, there is a lot that the students are responsible on their own now. So we need to make sure that we have enough material which is adapted in a way that the students can do things on their own as well and come back with positive results. So I'll take an example of UBC. I'm sure most of you are aware, the University of British Columbia. It's one of Canada's most prestigious universities. Usually, if you see the ranking, it's among top 30 of global university. So, and it's also very big, not just very good, but it's very big. It has about 66 to 70,000 students in campus in Vancouver, and there's another campus which has about 10,000 students in Kelowna. So it was exemplary to see this transition in their courses and pedagogy. While I've read articles where the faculty said that the remote teaching, the pivot to remote teaching and learning can be described as a transition to online classes. But according to them, a more appropriate phrase that they would want to use it would be emergency remote teaching or even improvised instruction. And that is true for many institutions across the globe. Like UBC was very quick to improvise, innovate, and communicate. It was like a knee-jerk experience for the staff and students equally, I would say. On the other hand, there are multiple examples available where colleges and institutions could not adapt and innovate with the same nimbleness, which resulted in a lot of layoffs all across the globe. And more importantly, also for the students, it was curtailed learning experiences. Or, even if online teaching was being offered, it was more of an eyewash. As a result, that it did not really enrich the students with the knowledge that was just customary and was being given to them. So UBC proved that rapid and comprehensive change is possible, even in a large university, in spite of the fact that these kind of large universities and establishments like UBC, they come across as very slow and bureaucratic, which is true for most of the institutions, I would say, in India too. But just like UBC, moving multitude of courses online within few days, UBC actually moved everything online within a weekend. We closed down here on, say, March 13th was probably the last day. March 13, 2020 was the last day that classes were delivered in person. And 14th and 15th was Saturday and Sunday. And Monday, they were back to their online classes. So they did not really miss a day. This is how quick they were. But, moving all these number of courses online actually shows agility and preparedness on the part of the management, faculty, and staff of each institution which made that transition. A change of this magnitude, only few could have anticipated. No one was prepared for it. But at the end of the day, people felt proud, when individual efforts fused collaboratively to create this major change. So having said all of this, I would say that once we have established and once we've understood the need that we need to be innovative, we cannot use the material or our way or methods, what we were using in class, in person, then the next step would be to look at tools and strategies to make the learning experience for our students more enriching. But first, we all need to accept that there is a need for innovation. Okay, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, now let's dive into our topic for today and discuss what works and what doesn't work in online teaching, according to my experience and views. So I'm sharing my thoughts with you all, not just an educator today, but also as a student. So I have been teaching online for over 2 years now, but I recently also finished my immigration consultant diploma, which was again delivered online. So whatever I'm going to share today is kind of a balance between educator and my experience as a student as well. So each teacher and institution is striving. We have to agree that, everyone's trying their best to offer an equitable experience to all the students enrolled in their courses in colleges and universities. And in the current circumstances, this includes minimizing and mitigating barriers to student access and success that may be experienced with online teaching and learning. So the foremost thing which I would ask for is to decide what should be the structure of your classroom. And I would say that online classes usually fall into two categories: synchronous and asynchronous. So let's see what synchronous classes are. So those are the classes which run in real time with students and the teacher attending together at the same time. Okay? And of course, different locations as it is in today's scenario. So synchronous are virtual classrooms. They operate more like traditional classrooms. When a set study schedule is followed, there are live discussions. In this setup, the feedback is immediate and the learners get their queries and questions answered instantly. For example, synchronous activities or class structure would be online chat, video conferencing, or what we are exactly doing right now. On the other hand, asynchronous classroom looks a little different. Classes run on more relaxed schedule, where students access the class material during different hours from, of course, different locations. So the students digest the instruction or the material that's provided, and they communicate with each other on their own time. Therefore, this offers, of course, much enhanced flexibility to the learners and is also very cost effective for institutions if they have to offer asynchronous classes, because thousands of learners can be reached at the same time. Some of the examples for asynchronous activities would be, say, reading, writing assignments, pre-recorded video sessions, student presentations, individual or group projects, online discussion via, say, discussion boards, etc. I mean, numerous activities like that. But before you plan all of that, you need to decide what is the class pattern that you want to have during the entire program. You can have different patterns. You can change them according to one course or the other as the program progresses. So, and while planning your classes, it's important that the teacher should ideally consider both synchronous and asynchronous components in the entire duration of the course. So clearly, both activities have their pros and cons. But majorly, you would see that the asynchronous activities may offer the most flexible and flexibility, right? Whereas synchronous activities may more easily build community and are more interactive. So you have to decide what your class structure needs to look like at the end of the course. And that's when you decide the structure, and then you see what are the activities that can be supported under synchronous and asynchronous pattern, and create a great combination of both. So I have been a part of a class setting as a student this past year, where the blend of both these components was achieved effectively with very productive results. And this allowed the students and the teachers to benefit from different delivery formats, regardless of their schedules or preferred learning methods. So the approach provided us with not only access to immediate help if we needed, it also gave us the ability to learn at our own pace. So a right combination worked in favor of, I would say, if not all, most of the students that I try to take feedback from as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Let's talk about another aspect of effective learning or effective teaching. That would be peer learning. Now, peer interaction and learning is very, very imperative. See, in a classroom setting, the traditional classroom, in-person classroom, peer learning is a lot more straightforward, considering there's a face-to-face interaction. The same cannot be, unfortunately, said about online classes. Hence, there are more reasons to foster peer learning. So there has to be a special effort that the instructor has to take to make the students feel a part of the community, while of course keeping them motivated and keeping them engaged in the course, which is also a bigger priority. But peer learning is an effective way to make learning interesting and teach students to develop an array of useful skills such as communication, teamwork, leadership, delegation, and very importantly, ability to give and receive feedback. So what are the tools that facilitate peer learning? According to my experience, I would say some of the ways that encourage peer learning are peer review assignments or online group collaborations. But I would also say that online tools such as discussion boards and breakout rooms are extremely useful too. So interactive discussion topics for students can be set up on discussion boards. You can create graded or ungraded as well discussion boards where students can post, they can read the responses from their peers, and they can also leave the replies on the discussion board. This is a very, very, I would say, favorite method of peer learning here in North America. Breakout rooms is another great strategy too, which is very popular as well among teachers here. So you can use breakout rooms during a real-time lecture. That's a really beneficial thing. Like you're having a Zoom session, you can actually have a breakout room in that. And it can be used with various online platforms. So breakout rooms actually allow you to split your main session that's going on as a class, and you can separate it into smaller sessions. So students can interact in groups. So this allows the participants to meet in smaller groups and completely isolated in terms of audio and video from the main sessions. But having said that, in spite of the fact that they're totally separate, but that doesn't mean that the teacher does not. As a host, teacher has complete control over these sessions. So the teacher can join any session, any breakout room that he or she wishes to. They can return to the main session and absolutely their choice, or they can switch between. So if your students are in breakout rooms and they're probably discussing, say, their group assignments, you cannot be just sitting in the main session with no recipients or no audience. So what, as a teacher, you would do in an offline setting, if the students are working in groups, you would be going to each one of the group, just trying to overlook what they're discussing, if their discussions or their assignment is in the right direction, if it's on the right track. So you would just keep a view of all of that, and you can absolutely do the same thing in the breakout rooms. You can also say, close all those sessions. It just gives a 60-second timer to every group, and they know that they would be joining the main session automatically. So, and like if there's suddenly a question that you feel what you've taught or what you've delivered today, this is something you want your students to discuss. then you can broadcast that message. And broadcasting it at your main session, it's going to reach all the groups. So why I'm discussing this at great length is because this is a strategy I've experienced successfully as a student. And during my online course, we were assigned breakout rooms all the time with our groups, where we would intermittently discuss our group assignments, also come up with questions for each other. So, that would challenge the learning that we had, which came from our teacher. So I would say one of the clear benefits seen through my experience was the ease of cross collaboration. And of course, interchanging for the teacher, interchanging of groups at a flick of a mouse. So you can interchange people, you can send them from one group to another. You can change the groups if you feel there is, a group that's not a heterogeneous, or there is some issue that you're facing with one group. Change them right away. So there's so much control in the hands of the teacher, but also on the other side, the students will feel that they are under control because they're working in their little group. And it helps some of the students to come up more comfortably when they're in a smaller setting. And then everybody can bring back their ideas to the main session, to a bigger classroom. Let's move to the next slide. Now let's look into another important component. That's communication. Communication is usually taken for granted because we all believe that we are great communicators and we are extensively communicating with our class. And we've done that since our offline classes, since we were a student and then a teacher. Of course, the communication levels change, patterns change, but we have all been communicating. Hence, I would say that it's taken for granted. So while effectively communicating with the students in your online classes aids in retention for your students, but I would feel that as educators, is that all we want to do? Do we just want them to retain what we are really trying to throw at them in the class? Well, I would say that we need to do a lot more than just the retention of what we are asking them. So we should provide them with a sense of community while enrolled in online classes to avoid the sense of isolation that some online students experience. It's a known fact that the sense of isolation that people have had throughout this 1.5, 2 years, in spite of being connected online, there is a gap. There is something missing. And that is where a teacher's role needs to become even more serious, because it's not just content delivery, but also connecting the students, communicating with them, and make sure that there's communication among them as well. So fostering a sense of community in online classes will make the learning experience more meaningful. And for online students, help them stay connected during the life of the course. And ultimately, it is going to be in favor of the teacher, because the students are going to be more receptive, be more ready to learn. But another angle I would say, which is utmost important to consider, is that how the students will communicate in the course with the teacher. Basic. Have you decided that the students will only use Zoom chat and that's it? Once the class finishes, the teacher's gone, poof. Or they can use emails, discussion boards, or text chats. So whether you want to keep it formal, informal, etc., you have to ask yourself these questions. So these decisions need to be clearly, after you have made those decisions, they need to be clearly communicated to the students. Though, what needs to be kept in mind is, very importantly, that whatever your chosen route of communication, however you want to decide, make sure that you are consistent and you use it regularly. Moreover, I would say, since the teacher might be less easy to contact as compared to a classroom setting, we should prioritize creating a consistent structure for teaching and learning activities. So students become familiar with the study pattern of the class and they're not caught by surprises. And as a result, they'll feel disoriented. So therefore, I would say consistency and setting clear expectations are vital. And while you're at it, uh, succinctness and brevity are to be factored into. So, in simple words, you need to be concise and clear in communicating what is expected out of the students. This might seem like a very basic thing, like we do all the time while we are teaching. We are sharing our expectations and wanting them to behave and live up to what is asked of the teacher. But I would say that in online teaching, all these things become more enhanced. Because like I said, that the teacher is not there. If it's an in-person class, even if the teacher walks out of the classroom, I remember I used to have students running sometimes. They have all kinds of questions. And they know teacher is there. If not in the classroom, you'll find them in the staff room. If not there, they're anyway coming back tomorrow. So that ease is missing for the students. So we have to think from the point of view of the student, how lost can they be? Or they can feel, some of them. Okay, so I would say that one big challenge in online versus offline teaching is that the interlinking of the course material can also be lost in the online format. So connections between activities should be stated, and I would say restated to students, so that they can see how those activities and how the entirety fit it all together in the course. So communication right there, another important aspect for the students towards the teacher. Another challenge I would say with online communication is that it's important to understand that people might misconstrue what you said, no matter how carefully you're trying to compose it. But chances of being misunderstood are much more than it is in physical classrooms. So therefore, I would say be aware how you use your communication tools. So in my personal experience, I would say, something as basic as having the video on while delivering a lecture is very impactful too. For me personally, when some of my students choose to keep their videos off due to whatever reasons they have, I'm never sure if they're really absorbing what is being taught. And I find myself looking for reassurances from them much more than I do from those students whom I can see clearly on my screen. Because we all are trained in a way that we can pick up non-verbal cues very clearly. As they are equally important as the verbal cues are. So honestly, I would say live videos are as good as the real thing. So the online world can be really lonely and disconcerting. Therefore, it's crucial that students feel that connection with their teacher, and which would in turn benefit us because it would lead to richer learning experiences for our students. And the outcome is our success. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So an important facet of communication, I would say, in online teaching is explaining the purpose of the course which the students have enrolled into. So this would mean that you actually explain the learning objectives and goals of that particular course. So setting learning objectives is like setting on a journey. So you know where you are headed to, and you have a sense that you will know when you've reached your destination. So learning objectives serve to define that destination for your course. It'll be much easier for your students to engage with you in your course if they know where they are headed, right? And it will help you navigate the process of designing your course as well as you proceed, and of course, more importantly, before you begin. So I think it's very important that you ensure that course learning objectives are clearly articulated from the start of the course. Typically what format should we have when we are saying that the course objectives need to be conveyed to the students. So, you would use a dialogue like, say, by the end of this course, you will be able to. And whatever you have at the end of that sentence, they are basically your learning objectives. So you have to decide how do you end that sentence and how you convey what your learning objectives are to the students in the simplest way possible. So this offers a priority list for how students are to engage in learning for you and what needs to be measured during and at the end of the course. So you will be able to tweak the objectives, of course, as per your requirements. And it's not set in stone that you've declared or you've written down the objectives. So there's nothing that I can do. I have to push my students and myself to complete that. No, I think in the current circumstances, in the light of these circumstances, you can definitely, tweak them in a way that, ask yourself this question, that are the learning objectives achievable for my students at this time? And if you seem to be answering yourself in all honesty that no, it's not, then of course you need to adapt, you can alter, you can remove, or even defer some of them until later for the degree program. So they are for your and your classroom understanding. They are not a binding on you, but they are a good start. So use your learning objectives to guide your decision about where you will invest your and your students' time. Let's move to the next slide. So every teacher would feel at home with this picture, I would say. One important consideration for active learning involves an educator's willingness, to experiment and ideate. And I think all of us are pretty much doing that. We've experimented, we've come up with new ideas. And in order to learn and teach, I think one has to be willing to take risks. And that's what we've been doing for all this while. We've been doing it even while we were teaching in classes, but I would say that the risk factor has increased much more during these times where we've moved to online classes. So I would say for a successful learning cycle, that's what every teacher aims at. A teacher needs to align learning outcomes, which we just discussed, teaching and learning strategies, which we've been discussing all this while, as well as the evaluation methods. So I would say assessment is a very critical component of the online classroom pattern. It provides students with an idea of their progress in the course, just like offline classes as well. And it identifies individual strengths and weaknesses. And ultimately, serves as a measure of whether students achieve the course's learning objectives, or was there some gap that we could not fill. So assessment isn't just important from a student's perspective, I would say, in today's world. With the online marketplace becoming increasingly crowded, it's critical that institutions ensure that they are offering the courses and experiences the students are looking for. It should not be the other way around. It's the student's need that needs to be fulfilled through the courses and assessment. So because, the majority of online students are career focused now, courses and degree programs must provide those ties to the real world for institutions to stand out in the online landscape. Given its importance to the online classroom, assessments can be a great starting point for integrating this type of relevance into your course. Something like authentic assessment. That's an idea of using creative learning experiences to test students' skill and knowledge in realistic situations. Now, what is referred to as authentic assessment? I would say, simply put, an authentic assessment is one that requires students to apply what they have learned in the new complex circumstance or situation. So I would strongly suggest that consider your assessment strategy how evaluations are structured, weighed, and deployed within an online course can support students in a manageable and a sustainable way online. For example, what we have been using and what we have been doing, say as a teacher as well as a student, I would say, low stake and mini assignments that help keep students on track for success on larger projects. Consider few or maybe no high stake exams alongside regular engaging low stake activities and a scaffolded term project, overall covering the term, whatever they all can be very justifiable evaluation strategies. But end of the day, you as a teacher has to decide what works in your class according to your course and your pedagogy that you're going to be following. Next slide, please. Right. So one of the strategies for effective online teaching, which I think all of us would agree, is using visuals. Visuals hold more appeal than plain, simple text, to these curious, intuitive minds that we have as students. And why just students? I think people of any age would respond better to visuals. So several studies we are all aware that have been conducted to prove the power of visual aids in e-learning. And there are some interesting results drawn from them. Also, visuals help improve learning tremendously and on multiple levels, I would say. Hence, that's why we have about 65% of our population who are visual learners. Visuals have been found to improve learning by up to 400% as per numerous surveys conducted. And I think we all are aware that some of its well-known benefits are that they help you store information longer, and the communication is quicker and simpler, right? Visuals transmit messages faster, and they're very effective. Visual adaptations of our content aids better comprehension and understanding. And for me, I think the most important reason that I would use visuals is because it drives motivation among the students. It keeps them on their toes. That's what, kind of entices them. So I would say it's a clear benefactor to online learning. For example, graphs, charts, images, even videos, they effectively capture attention and convey ideas where words run the risk of falling short. Like, long paragraphs, stretched, condensed into images. They can teach a better lesson and skip all the confusion the words can create. So visuals allow you to make complex simple. Thus, it's easier to follow. So there's something about this enticing graphical treatments and aesthetically pleasing designs that draw people in and make them want to learn more. And if they want to learn more, our students want to learn more, you've succeeded. And I guess that's what we are all aiming at. That's our goal. So visuals do help you a lot to achieve that goal. But I would say on the other side, there are a few things to remember while incorporating visuals in online learning, because their wrong use can easily distract the learners as well. More importantly, visuals should not be used for purely aesthetic purposes. They should be used because they represent specific ideas and objects. And they simplify complex concepts and they connect new ideas to old concepts. So there has to be a need of a visual. It should not be forcibly thrust into our subject matter. And another aspect that you should keep in mind while using visuals is that low resolution images, overuse of stock photography, users to lose interest. And am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are
Yes,
perfectly
ma'am.
audible.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks to technology, my screen suddenly changed, and I'm not even sure if I was on Zoom still. All right.
No, ma'am, you were on.
Okay. All right. So I'll continue. So it's actually a little odd that, I realize that I'm saying all these things, and this is a webinar being hosted by the computer department. So I really, I'll fall short of words when I say that, overuse of visuals and low resolution images, because you guys are definitely better prepared in this case than anybody like me. But anyway, I would really want to say a thing that it's very important that you need to be sure that the format of your visual content, like videos and images or illustrations that you're using, that needs to be used in your training program. You need to see that it should be supported by the platform of online course that you are using. And very importantly, another important aspect that I always, I cannot um, specify how important I feel this is, that the teacher has to make a very informed decision that how visuals will be paired with other forms of, of content that you are presenting. There has to be a reconciliation rather than a but it should add to it. So, in a nutshell, I would say visual learning can be a very powerful role, plays a very powerful role in improving learning outcomes, but it needs to be used thoughtfully and very strategically. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So every teacher needs to keep accessibility in mind as you have transitioned online. Accessibility needs to be understood on various levels. The teacher needs to be accessible to the students. The course material needs to be accessible. Technology needs to be accessible too for the students. So you can make your, things like what will aid accessibility is that you can make your course content available to download for offline viewing, which improves access for students with limited internet connection. Or the files that you upload should be reduced to the smallest practical size, which makes it easier for all the students to view and download it, regardless of their internet connection speed. I would say check in with your students regularly to ensure that you understand what they are facing and challenging, even relating to, say, bandwidth, and to help them mitigate those problems with your support. Invite students to, share with you or tell you if their technology or network connections are getting in the way of their ability to participate in the course, so that you can work with them on solutions, so that those barriers no more face a problem for all those students. But I would say most importantly, it is the accessibility of the students, of the teacher for the students. A teacher needs to be available in whichever route of communication the teacher chooses. So students can feel lost very easily in the online learning pattern. Therefore, to channelize them, a teacher needs to support them at all times. This, I would say, is probably one of the most important things a teacher has to do when it comes to online teaching, apart from, of course, content delivery. Next slide, please. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the pandemic ushered in a pressing need to improve the digital literacy of teachers and students equally. It was a major shift, just like this picture that on the slide depicts a sudden shift from hard copies to soft copies, from in-person to virtual, and much more. So much changed. So though the advantage may seem numerous for us, to be teaching online and to have moved online, but I would say teachers are still struggling with the sudden shift. This change was quick and unexpected for all of us. More than students, the teaching community had to train themselves to adapt with these new methods. So for me, there's no shame in accepting that I'm from the era where we never knew technology while growing up. I used internet for the first time during the summers of my graduation. But nevertheless, we should be proud of how far we have come and achieved so much in terms of mastering it. We have come a long way, I think, all of us, in bridging the skill gap by starting from the basics and actually treading into the unknown. But let's be honest, we still face challenges sometimes, and our fears would come true because at some point, technology will fail, whether bandwidth disruption or power outage, etc., or a video chat not working, or not connecting properly, or an assignment or a resource link not working properly. Therefore, I would say the only way to save yourself from situations like this is to have a backup plan for all your assignments and assessments that rely on technology. So technical difficulties can be solved through, say, pre-recording video lectures, testing the content way beforehand, and always keeping plan B ready so that the teaching and learning process does not get hampered, because that is our basic goal. With that, I would come to the end of my presentation, and I really hope that I was able to add a little bit to the understanding. And on a parting note, I would add that there is no doubt that we need to prepare ourselves better in every way for our teaching to be effective and holistic. In spite of all the challenges we face, online courses should be made dynamic, interesting, and interactive. And it is the responsibility of the teacher to see it through. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to share my thoughts on this platform in the presence of such senior colleagues. I look forward to be in touch with some of you in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your enlightening speech. Ma'am, you have given a very detailed explanation on online teaching strategy. You have very well defined that how to establish a virtual presence in the classroom. Thank you, ma'am.